Well, hey there team, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to my overview of Moonlighter. So, for those not across it, I do overviews on this channel. I have a little spiel about how I look at the first 2 hours of the game. That said, I do like going back to some other stuff that I haven't necessarily covered under this format, and in this case, Moonlighter, which may well be, I'll say it, this might be my favourite 11-bit Studios game, which is a really big deal, and probably one of my favourite indie publishing brands in 11-bit, in that they do so many cool and different and unusual things. So yes, a little bit out of season. There's a funny little story. I was sitting there writing code for my actual main job and had Spotify on, and the main theme song for Moonlighter came over my Spotify, and that created a drop everything, listen to this banger that I haven't heard in forever, and immediately proceed to see if it was on sale, which it is. So I'm going to push this video out nice and quick. If you're watching this at the time it comes out, Moonlighter is on deep sale. Very deep. It's going for like $4 or $5, at least for the next, day. So you should get it. Highly recommend it. Sight unseen, Scarlett says get it. But to go into it a little bit more, like I said, I jumped in and revisited it and booted up a new save. Oh, it's got such a great setup, but you can see from the beautiful painterly hand-drawn art and the top-down old school OG Zelda type aesthetic, especially when you're moving through dungeons from room to room. Things like Binding of Isaac might be a little bit more touchstone for modern kids, but that mixed with the soundtrack, and there is a sort of wholesome nature over the top of, a moderately lethal premise, but the setup is really basic and straightforward. This dungeon thing appeared near this town, or, well, the town wasn't there, I don't believe. I'm not going into the lore super deep, but it's got like 5 doors. They're all locked except one. You go into this dungeon, it's procedurally generated. They sort of nothing narrative it away. Oh, the dungeon shuffles up each time you go in. Who cares, right? Whatever, it's a video game. You run through the dungeon. If you can complete the dungeon, you'll get a key at the end of it on the sort of final boss, and you'll unlock the next biome. And so that's your big, massive meta objective, is to work your way through all the dungeons. Now, it's incredibly lethal and very difficult, and quite gear-based, so that's just not going to happen. Attrition will kill you very quickly in your first run. They're kind of quick runs. And so these dungeons popped up, and it generated sort of 2 classes of people migrating there, and that were the sort of explorer fighter types and the merchant types. And so you're a bit of a hybrid, or a tale as old as time, kid that wants what's on the other side, right? The grass is greener and so on so. So you run the Moonlighter, which is the big main shop in town, and they don't really go into it, at least at the beginning, and you're essentially the sole proprietor, this young bloke that wants to be an adventurer, but you have this sort of familial, hereditary duty to run this shop. So you straddle the line between the two. So, generally speaking, a run will be, at night time you go into the dungeon. You could go during day, but there's essentially a day-night meta-turn loop, and the rewards and the monsters and all are a bit more intense at night time. So generally speaking, you go in at night. Either you risk it all and you die, you only get what's in your pockets, or you teleport out after you earn X amount of loot and bring it back. But the daytime is where you open the shop up to customers. You have little display cases where you can sell and showcase all said loot for people to come in and buy. And both mini games, or meta game loops, whatever you would like to call them, are excellent for totally radically different reasons, and both very, very well balanced. And it's great because to see that, it's all good and well. One studio can do one thing, but managing this sort of economy simulator where, as a loop, you essentially pick out things, and it's all very usable, thumbstick favored, and the buttons and all that work well, which is great because as soon as you get into menu-heavy games with thumbsticks, you can usually be fighting an uphill battle. But you can move these stacks across, and there's a logbook that will keep track of your costings. So you put something on the table, it'll be in a log entry, a la like a Pokemon or something like that. But it's more of a ascending, descending ladder with price checks at certain tier levels. So you can kind of get a very rough idea of this thing is probably in the range of between $0 and $300, right? But you don't really know. So you put it on display, you slap it with a price tag, and then little people come into your shop when you open up, and they're very cute, and they've got their adventure gear on, and they'll come and have a look, and they'll emote, like, yep, I'm happy with that price. Big smile. They'll bring it across to the counter and you can sell it. And the logbook will track essentially the emoticon reaction against the price placed. So the logbook entry will have 4 prices which are like, you know, reasonable. A steal, you know, their eyes light up with little dollars, and so maybe you're undercharging. And then at the other end, you've got sort of like too expensive, a bit of a sad, reluctant. I think they'll buy it anyway, but it hurts the price for the rest of the day. There's sort of like a little augment. So you overcharge and you hurt demand. And then there's just outright righteous fury. How dare you charge me $100 for these mixed lollies? And so it's very addicting and engaging and just really trying to eke out that price point and measure it. You're sort of haggling against yourself in a way. So that's really fun. And on top of that, there are, you know, the wider town that you reinvest into. You essentially pay the price to build new buildings that are inhabited by new shops. Who cares? It's a video game. What the point is that you invest money to create options, which will be things like crafting potions to heal, which are very important, especially in the early going, to like getting gear and that. You start with a sword and shield, and it's pretty much like a 2-button interplay. You know, 1 button blocks, 1 button hits, you've got dodge rolls, that sort of thing. But, you know, you can get other sets, fists, heavy weapons, 2-handed weapons, bows, things like that, and then armor sets, which go from heavy all the way down to light. So it has that rudimentary action combat game. It's tight, it's clean, it's relatively simple. Like I said, 2 attacks, a roll, that kind of thing. Learn the enemy's telegraphs. They hit like a truck. Figure out if you're going to be more mobile or more tanky. And then, you know, go and do those runs at night. And look, at its core, that's pretty much all this game really is. All it is. I mean, I think I've managed to succinctly cover off on the appeal, the attraction. Like I said, the soundtrack, hearing it, just hearing the theme, made me drop everything and revisit this game. So that's pretty powerful. I'm a pretty big audiophile, and it's different to, and it is very difficult to convey that aspect of gaming through YouTube, because at the end of the day, I still make money off ad revenue. It's very touch and go whether you can play music or not, and yet, arguably, it might be the strongest thing for me personally. Everyone's different, but you get a good soundtrack right, and that will carry a lot of interest for me in a game. It's not to say that this game's not brilliant, but that was enough to get me mobilized and reinstall it and share it with you under this newer format. But yeah, look, like I said, I thought I'd just slap this together and put that out there, let you know, give you a bit of a Soldiers 5 brief as to what this game is and why you should be playing it. At the very least, pick it up while you can if you catch this video in time, or chuck it on a wish list. It's still fairly cheap, sale or not, and it's worth every cent. And I believe the sequel has been announced, which gets me very excited. There are plenty of big budget AAA things that I'm excited for coming down the pipeline. You know, your Death Stranding 2s, that sort of stuff. But Moonlighter 2, whew, that's got to be right up the top of the list as well, for sure. Anyway, clearly, I highly recommend it for all. So trust me, bro, pick it up and you won't regret it. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.